Hi, everyone. My name is Tej Yale. I'm the founder and CEO of Think Impact. We are a marketing company based out of Rochester Hills, Michigan. And today I'm very fortunate to have my friend and also fellow business owner, Alex Anderson. Thanks for being on the show, Alex. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course. I appreciate you having me, Taj. It's good to see you.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, I think we went to school together and kind of have been in touch. So that's kind of setting the background of kind of how we know each other and have kept in touch. So Alex Anderson is a sales strategist and founder of the Denver-based consultancy Elevated Business Advisors. Since starting the firm in 2018, Alex has worked with organizations across the US, ranging from growing startups to some of the world's biggest, including multiple companies eclipsing $10 billion in revenue. Anderson, who specializes in new client acquisition and internal sales operations, brings a unique approach to the table on every opportunity rather than pre-canned solutions. He helps formulate and execute customized action plans tailored to specific needs, wants, and pain points of his clients. Alex is also an author of a new sales methodology, Technically Selling. Congrats on the launch of the book, by the way, which combines his technical focused selling style with extensive research in behavioral economics and cognitive psychology. The abundance of resources, including over 50 newly defined strategies and techniques, are geared for experienced salespeople and are all designed around one common goal: maximizing sales performance. So thanks again, Alex. Appreciate it. So my first question to you is, what prompted you to enter the entrepreneurship rather, and can you share your entrepreneurship journey and how you started the company?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the intro and the kind words. So yeah, I started my business almost exactly 2 years ago, June 1st of 2018. Prior to that, just a little bit of the background is I was in sales in the group insurance industry. So big insurance, and we sold, another name would be employee benefits. So benefits you'd get from work, things like that. So we work with companies on that kind of strategy. And so I sold there for 6 years, and I liked it. It was a great job. I loved the company and all of that. But it kind of came down to a few things as far as wanting to venture into the entrepreneurial world. First, that's not something that I ever thought of until probably a couple years prior to leaving Tops. I was kind of okay, and more so even wanted to kind of stay in that big business realm from a sales standpoint. So I didn't come out of college being gung-ho about starting a business. But I've had a lot of great mentors and a lot of people that are in those situations that I kind of got to the point where I realized that maybe I could do something on my own. And then that compelled me as far as then the timing. It was really the biggest reasoning for leaving, just because I knew that I had as a young single guy, I had time to put in those long hours. I had time to fail. I had time to kind of develop what I wanted to, which we'll get into, I'm sure. But yeah, so it came down to timing, and then the last part, and it kind of, you touched on it with behavioral economics and cognitive psychology, was really my just getting thrown into that world. It was kind of, I call it a light bulb moment. It's actually something I touched on early in the first book, which is how I got kind of into it. But I realized how big the psychology, really just all behavior, it was going to be in business. It just correlated so much with what I did as a salesperson. And so while the topics were pretty advanced, and there were some things over my head and still are in that realm, but it just made a lot of sense as somebody who has always worked with people and external communication. And so I knew that was going to be a thing, and I wanted to be on the forefront of the whole behavioral science kind of movement that is slowly making its way into business.
It's great. So there wasn't like one big factor that kind of made you think, hey, this it's great to have a paycheck, but I want to kind of start my own journey. I guess maybe it would be a culmination of things. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's, yeah, definitely a combination. So there wasn't a big moment. There wasn't any disdain or like ill will towards my former company. I still keep in touch with a lot of them. I was hired post leaving, which is a good sign, right? And so yeah, it was really none of that. And when I'm building strategy, and so that's really what I do is design custom sales strategy, mainly at the organizational level for businesses, but with the new technically selling. And again, we'll get into it a little bit, but it's that's more on the individual side. And so yeah, that's I knew that I could kind of get a leg up with that timing and then the behavior and all of that. So we're definitely a combination of things.
That's good. So I know at times, I guess people often sometimes think sales and marketing are one and the same. So what are the biggest, I guess, misconceptions that you've heard, and how are you planning on, I guess, how is Elevated Business Advisors kind of putting itself on the map to overcome maybe some of the perceptions that people might have about sales, how it may correlate to other industries?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great question, because there is a significant difference in a lot of ways. So one of the biggest is the difficulty level of sales. And so when you're dealing with field level execution in sales, which is sales and most salespeople is, marketing, you kind of concoct internally, right? And then sales, you're carrying out a lot of things in the field. And what people don't realize, or it's something I thought that gets glanced over, is salespeople aren't in control of outcomes, right? So we're not in control of a buying decision, but nobody's ever really learned how to sell, right? So they just kind of wing it. And then so like marketing is relatively straightforward. It's a necessity, and they go hand in hand for sure. But the reality is that if you're going to get ahead from you just have to realize that field level is going to be way harder. Like I come from an industry where the average close ratio is 6.5%. And so you're losing day in and day out, and they're long sales cycles, and you put a lot into it, but once it's gone, right? And so there's just a difference of a strategy, so there's a marketing strategy, which is extremely important, and then there's sales strategy, which is what I do. But it's something interesting is that not many have external strategy, and especially from a development side. So when you start in sales, nobody's really educated in sales. I was one of the fortunate few, and my fellow Western Broncos, just a shout out there. We were fortunate to get trained in things like, or educated in things like territory management and negotiation and pitch strategy and questioning technique and all of that kind of stuff. And so most people haven't done that. And then from the corporate level, they typically just provide onboarding training, which is tied to the company and whatever kind of methodology that they have, but it's usually around product based or solution based. Mm-hmm. And that's typical or traditional business, is kind of teaching those outcomes of what it is that they want the end goal to be. And then they have some tools to help try to get to that point. But it's just a different ball game when you're talking in the field, because, you're working with all types of personalities and occupations and things like that. So you need to be able to adapt. And so my methodology isn't something, so I have some day ones, which I'll get into, of creating the methodology. This wasn't my original plan when I set out from work. It kind of became just kind of different beast over time. But when I kind of put the foot down of, okay, I'll develop a full sales methodology. It was, so like the day ones would be value to experienced salespeople. And so basically non-new hires. And so ongoing training and curriculum, things like that, or learning. And then the other, since I work mainly in the organizational space, is it has to fit within the structure of a current organization. And there's a number of reasons for that. So I don't go in basically saying to change anything.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean that genuinely. It's more of looking at what they have currently and then designing or writing strategy or working as a team and open that conversation to essentially improve upon what they're doing currently from sales training and things like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, and I don't know if that fully answered your question. It was kind of roundabout, but I'm happy to expand on that as well.
Oh, absolutely. And then I have one more question before I turn it over for a Q&A. So congratulations again on the book launch. That's great news. I think it was a couple of days ago that we were exchanging some emails that you were saying you were going to announce the book launch. That's great. And I was wondering if you could talk about kind of the sales methodology or the how the economics and the psychology come into the book that you recently launched, and maybe what readers who get the book, what they can expect, and kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you again. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's cool. It's been a long road, and I was planning on rolling it out much earlier, and then the virus hit, so we all kind of had to shift gears, but really not necessarily in a bad way for me. I just kind of delayed some things, and so to give you kind of just a high level, and then I can nail down on specific topics or whatever it is that you want. Is so when I say like a methodology, it's basically like the all-encompass. So that's technically selling, and then it's advanced sales strategies for professionals. It's kind of the overall name within that. And it first started, and this will get to the book, I promise, but it first started as so advanced level training curriculum. So I would go in and train companies and their sales team, or with coaching, and I infuse it in consulting and things like that. Um, and so there's a full kind of methodology that's more corporate level training, and that's kind of how it started, and it's also how it's going to end. This whole rollout's going to be about a year, and then so there's that side. The methodology side is kind of how I look at it, and then there's the book side, which is, so it's called A New Era. So technically selling a new era. It's just kind of a new era of sales and business, and so within that, there's 3 books, all going to be electronic, that touch on different insights, specifically within during this research phase within the behavioral economics and psychology. Because being educated and having that formal sales background, I had a good sales base, but I didn't know much on the psychology and economic side, right? And so once I left my job, that was my first move after Asia, after the big extended mental breather and a break there. So I went deep into the research um, within that, and so each book highlights a few different things there. So I'll touch on those kind of topics. Is that
Yeah,
good segue,
sure.
or does that kind of make sense of how that's broken up? So
Yeah.
there's
Uh-huh.
like, okay, cool. So the individual side is kind of that current phase that I'm in, and so well, I guess first off, just kind of overcompassing whether all phases of my business, and then throughout the book and everything, it really boils down to 3 core focus areas that I just spent, that's infused in every single thing that I do, and that's strategy, delivery, and efficiency. So strategy being preparation. There's nothing more important in my selling approach than preparation, which is a topic for a different time, but it's every situation requires adaptation, even if it's just small. It should. You should never have a one size fits all approach, in my opinion. So you need strategy and preparation to do that. Second, delivery. So that would be kind of that field level execution, and then whether you're giving a final pitch, you're setting appointments, you're You're meeting a prospective client for the first time, right? So that's a whole different approach. That's executing in the field. And then lastly is efficiency, which has always been a big part of my approach as a salesperson. I call it quality control, or another name could be sales efficiency, which would be how I look at it as organization, prioritization, and delegation. And so all of those are really important. And because my approach and technically selling and all of that is a proactive selling approach rather than reactive. So it's out there going and getting the meetings and delivering the pitch and controlling the meetings and all of that. You need to have time to be able to do that. And sales is just as hard as it's ever been now, but I said that right before the virus, before that was even a thing. So it was already the hardest it has been ever, just as an occupation. And now it's even harder. And so it's hard. And the biggest reason, in my opinion, of why it's harder is dealing with time, because you get hit from all angles with emails and all sorts of things that you have to manage: internal relationships, external relationships, account managers, all of that kind of thing. And so there's just a lot of time people don't have time left to sell. And so the efficiency part is a massive part of it. And it's something that I teach throughout the books as well. So before I go on kind of the topics of the book, does that kind of make sense, or any questions on that? So yeah, strategy, delivery, efficiency. So from the topics and just getting to the behavioral side of it, something that I get excited when talking about is just, I find it really interesting and all of that. And so the first book which will be released August 1st is, it's called Bring the Pain. It's Anywhere Part 1. And that is, it's the name of my #1 influence technique. And so I have, over 50 influence techniques that I designed, basically that one can leverage based off of their situation. And so it's like, if you're looking to influence a buying decision, it's going to be more persuasive. I call it Bringing the Pain. Another name could be Framing the Losses. So historically, when you're positioning something, when you're selling it, whether it's marketing, external or otherwise, you're positioning positive outcomes, typically, that one could get after post-purchase with their solution. But and so they're framing gains is essentially what you're doing, whether it's cost savings, time savings, new benefits, things like that. But one of the things that I teach, and one of the big breakthroughs that I had during this research, is the impact of losses over gains. And so the research that I really went into is decision making under risk. So that's all from a cognitive psychology standpoint. And within that, it's really even more the 3: risk, and then emotion, and then memory, recall was kind of the third one, because sticky messaging, things like that, right? So basically it's teaching, and this isn't necessarily giving it away, because I've got to teach that, is say you have a technology solution that saves time, which is a big thing these days, right? It would be advised if you reframe it and say, have that conversation around, instead of, hey, we're going to save you time, how much time are they currently losing by maintaining a less optimal process? And then you align your solution with theirs. So you're bringing the pain by bringing pain top of mind. And one of the big things that I say, and I'll get into some of the other ones, or I can highlight them, but one of the biggest things about every single technique, there's not one that doesn't have this, is influence and improve. So we're influencing the buying decision, by bringing that pain top of mind. And, and there's a lot of context behind that, right? But you're also improving their decision-making ability. And that's, again, you're influencing and improving on every single time. So we're you never restrict or mandate options, but you're improving it because you're bringing pain top of mind that otherwise wouldn't have been. And this is something that you could be your call later or whatever, but it's really because every single component of decision making is driven by the unconscious mind. So zero conscious awareness at all. It's even past the subconscious. So even evaluation, judgment, perception, memory, all of that, the whole process occurs without conscious awareness, right? And it's driven by bias and a thing called heuristics, which are shortcuts, right? And so what I kind of came to the realization was you're able to essentially leverage that information to just craft a more persuasive story. So it goes to that achievable adaptations as well as I'm not going in to tell you how to sell. A lot of that stems from I'm working with near exclusively senior salespeople and senior leadership. If you tell them what to do, it's just not going to work out, right? But you're able to leverage these to make your message more impactful. So does that make sense? Kind of how that works?
Yeah.
Yep. So like in money, so say they have a big renewal or you're getting a big increase or you're saving them a ton of money. How much money are they leaving on the table instead? And it just requires, some finesse and technique to get there and bring that, but you're also improving it because I don't think I might not have finished my thought, but it's a big reason why that pain is blocked out is because of law of least effort or path of least resistance you might be familiar with, which is brain's choice to use the least amount of energy for each task. And so because it requires more processing power to review a loss, the brain's going to ignore it and block it out and then keep moving forward. So just by bringing it up, you're at least improving their evaluation because you need to see both sides and you're helping them do that, but you're also guiding them towards your solution.
That's great. Sounds like some interesting research and kind of the concept and tactics behind that research as well.
Yeah. It was cool. It's a lot of the research, most of it. So I do a kind of spotlight of each book of, there's a few people that really were just the biggest influences from that side. And biggest by far is Daniel Kahneman, who is cognitive psychology. He wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, which is a huge, he won the Nobel Prize in 2002. And a big reason was because of a paper called prospect theory, which is essentially gives a framework to decision making. It established biases like the framing effect. You might have heard framing, and other things. And so pretty much all of the research that I have is around Nobel Prize winning, research and data and informations and things like that. And it was just a really big part of my process. And also an advice or tip that I recommend often is going straight to the source. And so I basically went straight to that kind of research because that's really just what I wanted to find out from that sales side is the decision making under risk. And I've always been big in risk because of the insurance side, especially is that's kind of what risk is, or at least from business. So, so yeah, it's been pretty cool.
It's good. Now if I can just open it up for some questions. Anyone has any questions at this point?
Of course.
No, any other questions or? I know I have quite a few, but I wanted to let people...
One of the things I wrote down to mention is, so I have something I call open dialogue, which that's, it's just something that I call it, but it's always been a big part of my selling approach, which is I work completely open. I feel like I don't have anything to hide or even prove. And so, and it's important to, especially as a salesperson, when you're kind of at the, you're relying on their decision of yes, right? It's not the other way around. And so you need everything that you can get. And so by being open and kind of talking through, laying your heart cards on the table, or, just showing them, whether it be pricing or just being completely open about it and having that kind of conversation, you open up the other side. And it goes back to that perception of salespeople, right? Because nobody wants to feel like they're being sold. So it's like when I see like those deals, any salesperson, it's like, when they're trying to like trick you, or like, they're trying to pull a fast one to get you to add something to the yeah, exactly. It's like, it doesn't work. It actually has an adverse effect, because then you get angry of them trying to trick you, right? So it's just, I talk about needs, wants, and pain points. And I mentioned that as a lot of people, all three are really important. But the most important, in my opinion, is the middle, which is the wants. So most just focus on needs and pains, but it's in sales. But at the end of the day, what does the client want? Do you have it? Then give it to them. But and then move on, right? And you, no need to dwell. But it goes from an open dialogue. It goes back to, you're engaging in any sale. You're engaging in a mutually beneficial relationship. You have something that somebody wants, so there's just no need to beat around the bush. But that was a very long-winded way of saying, fire away. Asking what you want. Happy to dive into whatever you want.
Sounds good. Yeah, anyone had any questions? Or right, I guess I'll just ask some more questions then as well. That's okay. So going through your site, as you alluded to earlier, you went to Asia for a while. I saw you had quite the photography skills there with some of the cool photos that you've taken. So has photography played a big role, or kind of what piqued your interest within photography, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So yeah, it's I would say big. Yeah, it has, for reasons that I wasn't expecting. And so I got a camera in 2016, almost exclusively because I was getting burned out every year. So I just kind of come from that type of sale where, it's not unique to me. I was 100% commission as well. And and everybody in that industry is, and it's just real tough, and you just work long hours, and it's just a grind, and you just get burned out by the end of the year. And so I bought one basically to get another hobby. It's just like, I need something to separate my work from my life. And that allowed me to do it. It was really a slow kind of, transition's not the right word, but basically like a slow learning process for me. Because I wasn't really, trying to become a photographer. I was just doing it after work, and I had always traveled, and I'm big into backpacking and camping. And so I've been to cool places, and just felt like I should start documenting it. But the result, and so kind of all aside from the pictures and the personal benefit, is it really allowed me to separate. So basically it worked, is it gave me that separation to where I would really want to get back, and maybe whether it be reading psychology, that would be in the middle of it, but photography, books, or, whatever it is. I just really enjoyed it, just the technical aspect of it too. But it also gave me a kind of a creative outlet that I didn't know that I had. I never really thought of myself as like a creative type or anything like that at all. But, just whether it be posting or just all sorts of things, is it gave me other things to think about, and composition and framing and things like that. So that no doubt has crossover into what I do from the business side.
Okay, that's cool. And so what are some of the, obviously entrepreneurship is somewhat of a risk in terms of starting your own company and things like that. So what are some tips or tactics that you can provide to either current entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, and what that journey is like?
Yeah, for sure. I'll do best I can there. It's gonna have everybody's in a different situation, right? And so I was in a pretty fortunate situation, especially starting a consultancy where I was able to do it myself for a while. Thankfully, I'm getting to that point where I'm not, and just hired my first person and all of that, which is cool. But I was in a more unique spot as far as even like I would even say easier spot than some, because I had that I didn't have overhead and or don't um, but just kind of in general, let me think, would be long-term planning is really important. And so I'm not real huge on like actual business plans per se. And that goes some of that's for personal or this type of strategy stuff. But the reason is like things go wrong a lot, right? It goes to the things out of your control. It never goes as planned typically, or exactly as planned. But having those kind of benchmarks from a long-term planning side can help you get there. And it really is honing in focus. I talk about focus all the time, but it's really narrowing your focus around where you want to go and what you want to get to. Right. So everybody's wired to want immediate rewards and instant gratification. Same thing. It's like you don't need the science to say that people want instant gratification, but it's there. So that's what everybody wants. That's a natural thing to focus on. So that's one reason why you're seeing so many ads nowadays is they think outcome, instant gratification, and that ad revenue, and they're throwing up a ton of ads. But in my opinion, I'm like anti-ad. I'm like kind of outspoken. It just, I think, dilutes the user experience significantly, or the reading, whatever the medium is. Not saying it's not important. Obviously, there are situations where you absolutely leverage ads, but it's really just kind of thinking about your long-term play and then kind of getting to that point. So rather than just set an end goal, right, of starting a business or maybe reaching a certain milestone, but really narrow your focus around those steps. I call it desired outcome. It's like achieving end goal is, what do you have to do to get to your first desired outcome? And then, point A or point B and then C, right? So the COVID is a good example and it's a good example why I don't like models internally, because models break. And this is one example. And so I'll just use myself as an example. I was about to release the first book April or May 1st, and was going to do public speaking. That's kind of one of my things, and just go around the country and travel and kind of do that, which obviously, there's a kibosh on that pretty much right away. And so I had to kind of figure out, how do I want to approach this situation that I'm in, which is kind of getting my plan back on track and meeting that end goal that I was talking about, which is essentially, we'll just call it the end of the 3 books, right? So, because one move that I make is going to impact every single one of those. And so having those kind of long-term planning and thinking about that constantly is just a really important part of being really just an entrepreneur. And it's something that it helps me quite a bit.
Yeah, to that point, I guess that would be maybe a good segue to the next couple of questions that I had. So obviously, COVID-19 has kind of changed the business landscape, especially for small businesses, not to mention large businesses as well. So has your business been affected, and like what kind of aspirational messages, again, for entrepreneurs who currently are going through this hardship, as many of us are, what kind of message can you spread? Maybe they're feeling a bit discouraged or handling too much stress, but trying to manage it in a somewhat decent way.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's tough. It's a tough time, right? It's hard for everybody. It's unpredictable. It's, it's as unprecedented as a time as there's been. But I think everybody's got probably. I think we're all clear that it's unprecedented times, right? So I won't get on that. But I try to always spin things as positive, regardless, COVID or not, even pre. And a lot of times from your personal health, but it's also kind of one of the main advice that I give, and basically, so I have 5 pillars of my selling framework, which is a longer conversation. That's kind of where everything ends, is my framework of sales. It's for long-term development. But the first one is focus on areas of control. And so there's so much out of your control as a salesperson or a business owner, but if you focus on what is in control, it can help you get to where you need to go. So like if something bad happens, it's almost like a life outlook for me. Is something bad happens, I look at it, and that is, it's either my fault, like I did something to mess it up, which happens all the time, whether it's strategy or otherwise. So it's either my fault, I made the wrong decision, and you can learn from that and go forward, or it's out of my control. And so there's no reason to dwell on the out of your control part, like the virus. It happened, it's done, it's going to affect your business forever. So now let's think about what is in control. And so looking at and just as like from an encouraging standpoint, if you're starting a business and all of that, you clearly have a lot of value, and you have more value than what the external world knows, anybody. And so it's thinking about your value that you can provide, and then adapting it to what it is your clients need. So, or your buyers, whatever it is that you call them. So, just kind of thinking of new ways to do the same thing is a big thing. It's something I talk about a lot. That's essentially framing. When I said framing the losses versus the gains, it's the same thing. It's just a different way of saying it. And it's almost like that from a planning and preparation standpoint, is you're good. You've already got a good plan, right? But how can you do it differently to where you can elevate that, what it is that you're doing? And so it's a good time. So like for my business, and it's tough because I don't want to discredit, and I want to acknowledge the tough parts of what people are going on, and my job is to help that. But for me, it's actually been a positive, and like a genuine positive, because most everything about my material, top to bottom, is about adapting to the situation. And so it's just thinking about, so it's helping salespeople adapt, because that education side where people aren't educated in sales, and then there's so many different factors, right? And so it's definitely a beneficial thing for me, and that plays into it. And so I bet you that there's a positive too that you can get out of that as well. Like, hey, this is a benefit. COVID is a benefit to me because why? Just something to think about. I'm sure that there is a reason.
Sounds great. And the last couple of questions, just a fun question, I guess, to almost wrap it up is, are there any exciting projects or any exciting things that are going on within your company that you want to talk about, or anything fun?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, appreciate it. It's one that it's real top of mind because it was like a couple days old decision. But what I'm going to be doing, so as I release the book, is I'm going to be call it promoting it, but it's also a big part of my business, which is sales training. So I'm going to kind of infuse those two and do live training, and so you or anybody, so there'd be a limited attendees, can go on, when we have these kind of event type things, to where I'm educating on specific topics. So like the psychology of buying decisions and influence technique is going to be the first one. That's the primary focus of the book, right? And so you'll get the book, you'll get additional training material, and all of that, but you can do it in the comfort kind of your home. And so we'll be doing additional live training events as well, whether it be public speaking or negotiation, whatever it is. And I'm going to pull kind of the readers and kind of whatever people are interested in and things like that. So I really want to take an approach of kind of listening to what the market wants and what my demographic wants. And that's, this is something that I'm excited about because it allows me to kind of do what I was about to do, but I've not without the traveling and public speaking, but I really do like that kind of interaction. Even virtually, we can do questions and polling and follow up and all of that. And so that's going to be kicking off in August, and I'll be announcing some things here coming up. But excited about that. But really everything else, I love the consulting side, and you mentioned the photography. It's a huge hobby of mine. It's a big passion. But it's kind of a weird thing to say, but I like the sales side even better than like photography. So it's like, I'd rather be working than taking and editing pictures. So that's helped me kind of through this is I like what I do. That would be I guess an advice for entrepreneurs as well, make sure that you build your business around something that you like and that's, sustainable. Right. So, but yeah, a lot of big things, and it's going to be a fun road.
That's great. And my last question was for the book that's coming out on August 1st, if someone wants to grab their copy, where are the places that they can get it from, or do they contact you directly, or how can they get their hands on the copy on August 1st when it comes out?
Yeah, definitely. It's so it's going to be on technicallyselling.biz. And so we're kind of in the final development mode. Just the homepage is up now, but everything will be run through there. But really, so I guess in the meantime, just connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a Technically Selling group, which I'll give a little like of a sneak peek about what I'm doing there. If I expand on that.
Sure.
And so one of my big things, because I'm not like, you probably noticed, I'm just not huge on like social media, and I'm not going to be posting a lot or just too consistently, or until I have like a full team to do that. But my like kind of effort and energy, I want to focus on the solution itself, and then the value to the client, in this case, reader, individual who buys the book. And so rather than kind of a public posting spot where, I'll just kind of post high level clips, because my stuff is really more long form anyway, or at least more so than the norm. I'll be using that group to kind of post additional strategies or techniques, or I'm going to send, bonus or optional reads that people can dive into if they want. And so I'm leaving it open until the 1st. I'm not really making that public, but it's like until now, but which is fine. But after the 1st, it's going to lock and kind of be more of an exclusive member view type thing. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll hear about it. It's going to be a long journey with multiple phases and that. So would love to connect, and but that's LinkedIn's really the only place, at least on the front end, where I'll be at least somewhat active on social.
That's great. Well, thank you for accommodating our interview and for providing those that tuned in with some valuable sales insight. And I know I learned a lot and sharing your book launch and all the exciting and fun activities that are taking place for that. And can't wait to read the book and hear more about everything else that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Tej. I love everything that you're doing too. It's cool. It's something that's inspiring. So keep up the great work, and I appreciate this opportunity. And yeah, look forward to seeing your future success. And if you have questions, or if any of your kind of viewer base has questions too, just fire them over. And yeah, I look forward to it.
Sounds great. Good luck in all of your projects and with the company as well.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Tej. Have a good one.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone.